Hello, welcome. It is December 9th, and so I'm trying to make these videos short, which is really hard for me because there's so much that I want to say. But today I want to talk about ego and what ego is. Not only is it the name of my business, Empowering Gender Opportunities, but the word ego itself. It is the consciousness of our own identity. So embracing your identity is so important. And one of the things that I really want to talk about today, and I think it's important, is how can women embrace their identity in a structure which is predominantly valued masculinity. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how are we supposed to win in that situation. So if you want to go back to my introductory video and you'll know what I'm talking about as far as what ego's mission is, or you can go to my website, it's allaboutego.com. You can check out my military sexism video, which I talk about how I qualify to talk about sexism and my background in the military. I'm not speaking for the military, just speaking for self. And so anyway, how can women embrace their identity? So you can't have sexual assault and sexual harassment void of sexism. So we already talked about that. But there seems to be this tolerance for sexism in globally and in our world. And yet younger people today, both young men and women, have an intolerance for it. So there is this clash of cultures going on. And we know that sexual offenses of 70% are underreported, okay? These are studies that we've researched. 75% of people who do experience some sort of sexual offense anywhere on the spectrum, and we're not even getting into the criminal offenses of sexual assault, but somewhere on the spectrum, when they do report it, 75% receive reprisal. And then those who report it officially through some sort of EEO process, 80% are unsubstantiated. So it's almost impossible to win when you speak up for yourself regarding sexual harassment and sexual offenses. So it's about prevention, okay? Now, masculinity culture has been socialized to being superior. All kinds of evidence to support this. So it's not a bash on men, but it's that the male masculine traits are applauded more than the feminine traits. And so studies show how this shows up even for 4-year-olds. When you ask them who is smarter, the little boys or the little girls in the picture, and 80% will pick the little boys. Like, how do they already think that boys are smarter than girls unless there's some socialization going on? So why would, so we say, well, if we can't prevent it, why would people who have the power and privilege and have the advantage, why would they want to give up some of that power and privilege unless they see that it's actually hurting themselves? Why would they want to change a culture which has been advantageous to them? Unless they see its futility, like it really is hurting us all by hanging on to the old masculinity that we've been socialized to believe, that somehow males are superior to females. So we need to join the conversation about how sexism shows up, how to counteract its effects, and combat sexism, because it's hurting us all. And I'm frustrated a little because nobody wants to talk about it. You know, it's easier to say that it doesn't exist, that it's about personality, but there's so much evidence to prove that it does exist, that this gender bias, whether it's unconscious or conscious, it exists. And so we talk about sexual harassment and sexual assault and the awful damage that it does and the harm that it does to both men and women. But we're not talking about how it gets there. And it gets there at that beginning of the spectrum of the lack of respect for somebody based on their sex. And then just these comments are made and these attitudes are made and decisions are made with this bias in mind. And that's how it's hurting us. And so if we don't talk about it, if we don't admit that we have some bias around it, I mean, I think that generally people would say that we have bias towards race. We have bias towards even tall, good-looking people seem to get away with things more easily. I mean, we're not intentionally trying to give them the upper advantage, but tall, good-looking people do have the upper advantage, and men have the advantage over women. And even if it's unintentional, it's still harmful. It's harmful to both men and women. So I'm asking you to invest a little time, because we need an army of people to help combat sexism and impact so many other layers. So I'm going to keep this video short and follow up with more document paper that I have on it. But I am looking for my friends and allies as I gear up to launch Ego early next spring. I'm going to have a launch party sometime in January. We're going to have some educational seminars and some support groups. So we're going to talk about these conversations and see how we can lock arms together and make a difference and make an impact, so that, you know, things get better. So I look forward to your comments, your respectful comments. Not looking to fight, just looking to try to share my passion with you, and I appreciate anybody that's listening. Thank you very much. Out.